Man, oh man. So now, when you started doing the Katrina, you went to Florida, and you were working with the people from the studio out of New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us about that when you were covering that.
What's interesting is Channel 5, WCVB, of course, the local ABC affiliate here in Boston, is owned by a big media company called the Hearst Corporation. Owns newspapers and television stations and magazines.
We all know the Patty Hearst story. At least people my age do. You might not know it.
And one of the things they do is they own a couple dozen TV stations. One of the things that's helpful with that is if something goes catastrophically wrong with one of the stations that they own, they can go elsewhere. So a station in Greenville, North Carolina, could technically come to Boston and still get its stuff on the air.
I got you.
And what happened was WDSU was the station basically right in downtown New Orleans. It just got ravaged by the storm surge, so they couldn't broadcast. Their transmitter was taken out. So what they did is they relocated to our sister station in Orlando. Problem was, their staff were victims of Hurricane Katrina.
So they couldn't come in.
They all couldn't get there.
Sure.
You know, a lot of them were trapped, and they had...
and we're more concerned about their families than seeing them at that point.
Understandable.
That Channel 5 or whatever.
But,
it was, right?
you know, the diehards who knew that their families were okay and in some fortunate situations that their property was okay, they made the overnight drive up from New Orleans to Orlando. And what we did is Hearst actually assembled some go teams and started bringing people down to Jackson, Mississippi was one spot, and then Orlando was the other.
It was like mobile outposts, they set up.
Exactly. So in Jackson, Mississippi, a much smaller station, so it was a little bit more of a rural setting, whereas WESH is a big NBC affiliate down in Orlando, so they actually had the infrastructure to be able to do it. So I was one of the people that had the opportunity to fly down there, and I was down there for a week, and what we basically did was round-the-clock coverage that was sent back to New Orleans and broadcast live on the web. And one of the things that, you know, was encouraging when we were doing it, and it was motivating when, you know, we're sitting there working in the control room on our 10th hour of a live show, is that the TV became a connection for people to actually find relatives. We had the crawl, which you'll see in all these news stations now, the information crawl, became a thing to say, you know, Brian Kelley's okay, and he's with, you know, cousins in Jackson or things like that. And, you know, the people would try to bring on, you know, just a lot of live guests and things like that. It was amazing, all of the reunions that happened because of the TV coverage. What was really empowering about that experience, though, is that you realize that you can do such a public service with TV, and that's what
why I are here. This is a public service.
You're doing your share, you know? And because so often, sometimes you get bogged down in the minutia and the Britney Spears stories and things like that. But as difficult as it was to cover a real tragedy like that, it was also uplifting in so many regards. So it definitely re-inspired you.
Plus, now those people that came from the hurricane zone obviously were passionate when they're talking on the TV because they've experienced it firsthand. Now it's a personal. It's not someone else's story. It's their story.
Absolutely. You know, and it really brings it home. And you know, in addition to that, I was able to make some connections and selfishly land a job on it too. So it works in all regards.
Pass out your business card when you were there. Excuse me, wait. Were you with CNN? Forget about the story for a minute. I'm looking for another position. You see?
You know, always looking for that next step. You know.
And so you went to Milton High.
I was at Milton High. Yep, went to Milton High. I was actually Collycott, Pierce, Milton High, ran the gamut. Graduated from Milton High in 1999, which seems so long ago now. And I will say, though, that my experience in Milton High was one that really served as a jumping point, you know, for me. I mean, I think personally I had a little bit of an advantage in the sense that I did know, to a certain extent, what I wanted to do, but really, truly am indebted to the teachers that I had there. They were the type of people that allowed you to, you know, express a dream, express an aspiration. They really helped you get there, you know. And
who were some of the teachers you remember particularly?
I remember several in particular. Mary Lou Markarian, who was my Latin teacher.
I don't know if she's still there.
I don't know if she's still there either.
Oh, did you take that in Pierce? Is that PS?
No, high school. The high school, yeah. And she was a fantastic teacher in the sense of she was a master of her subject, so she knew how to teach you, but at the same time, she wasn't afraid to pull back from the curriculum every now and again and talk about an article that was in the Herald or talk about a big story that was news in the community.
Do you have MCAS then?
It's a very interesting thing you ask about this because I haven't really talked to any of my teacher friends in a long time, but from my time at Channel 5 and now nationally too at CNN, we do so many stories on these standardized testing and standardized tests, and No Child Left Behind, and the whole concept of teachers teaching to the exam. And the one thing that always troubles me when I hear about that, and I don't want to say it happens because, like I said, I don't have kids in the classroom, nor have I talked to any of my teacher friends, but what troubles me a little bit about that is the idea that there's no time anymore to kind of sit back and just have a discussion. Talk about something that's in the universe outside of the books.
A current event that just happened.
A current event. Something that's
a breaking news story.
And the thing is, at 17, 18 years old, you have some skills to get your head around it, but sometimes you actually do need those older people, to help you, to pull you through.
Well, look at September 11th for the kids that were in school that day.
Absolutely.
I mean, did they say, no, we're studying for MCAS, we're not going to even talk about this? You know what I mean?
And the fact of the matter is to for an event like that, I think the only way to truly grasp it is to have those types of informal, current events type discussions. Why did this happen? What is the conflict around the world that's making us a target? And you don't necessarily get that by reading a book. Right. So I do think that in my time at Milton High, they taught the lessons very well, and they gave me the skills to get good grades and to go off to BC and things of the sort like that. But at the same time, I think the thing they also did exceptionally well is they taught you how to think as a citizen. They taught you how to think as a person and to form an argument. On the topic of teachers, I also had a teacher, Mr. Radosta, John Radosta. I don't know if he's still up there. He's an English teacher. He's still there. The producer tells me he's still there.
Oh, he's like, I think he's one of the toughest as far as the kids go. Isn't it an advanced AP course or something?
Yes. I had him for freshman English. I remember it because I remember actually we watched the
My son's going to have him for freshman English next year.
Good luck.
A little insight.
We, coming from Colley Cotton Pierce, it was funny. I was talking to my mother last night, and one of the things I was saying is that the teachers at Colley Cotton Pierce were great, but they were almost like a second mother, very nurturing in a sense. They didn't come down on you too hard. And I remember walking into Mr. Adosta's freshman English class, and it was almost as if he was a scholar in the drill sergeant sort of way, if you will. I remember writing my first paper for him and sitting at home and writing it on the old Apple II GS. And I had words that I had heard somewhere in the universe that I thought they sounded good, So I thought I'd throw them in. And I remember him giving me back the paper, and it was a B or a C, and I couldn't believe it. I had never gotten a grade that low. And I remember him challenging me in front of the class, saying, and I still to this day remember the two words, ultimately and demise. What do they mean?
Oh, he called you on it.
Called me on it. And I couldn't tell him. I also couldn't tell him that I thought they just sounded good, so I threw them in. And he challenged me, and he wouldn't let me go. And I remember him saying to me, did you look him up? Did you ask for help? And, of course, the answer was no. And the funniest thing was I can remember going home and saying to my parents, I can't stand this guy. I want to get out of this class. But the funny thing is
you never let a word go on a paper that you didn't understand the meaning of.
It's very funny because it was a great lesson, because I do credit him with turning me around and the ability and teaching me how to write. But my first experience in a newsroom, and I remember it at Channel 5, it was a busy day, and I was writing my first couple of stories for Natalie Jacobson. And
what would expect?
It was a big moment. I grew up.
You were the ghostwriter?
Read the screen. It's tough being an anchor. If any of those Milton anchors out there are watching.
We don't have one of those things, the teleprompter.
All ad.
He's doing this all on his own. I want you to know that. No one wrote this. Go ahead.
I might pick him up. He's a true anchor. He can ad-lib. And, one of the things that happened is we were writing stories for her. We were crashing them down to the minute. And I remember the managing editor coming up to me and saying, I'm not sure you have the facts right. Is this right? And I remember being able to say to him on one of my first days in the job, they absolutely are. The Associated Press is reporting that. I'm confident with it. I'm 100% go with it. we went with it, and it was correct. But what I thought about when I was taking the train back up here is that in so many ways, it was the people like Mr. Adosta that prepared me for that. Now, when I was writing stories for him that I had to defend every word for just his eyes, now I've learned that lesson because I have to defend them for the eyes of our audience.
The world.
There could be
who watches it in the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in so many ways, it's funny. You don't realize it until you're well past it. But those people do have a huge impact, not only in your lives, but in my case, my career. My ability to pay that New York rent.
Oh, well, that's cheap.
Yeah.
How we doing with time, Eileen? We're good? We're getting to the okay. Well, Eddie, anything else you want to share with the folks of Milton? You got the open forum here. Go ahead. No teleprompter, nothing.
I would just say that as I've moved on and for now made New York my home and see so many different things that I'm privileged to see through my job. I realize how grateful I am to have been raised here in Milton, to have gone to the schools in Milton. I mean, I've come away from here with lifelong friends, and honestly too, in the sense of what I picked up specifically, at Milton High. I mean, of course, I know all the other schools and the other teachers. We're all jumping points, but what Milton High did for me is it really gave me the confidence to say this is what I want to do, to not be ashamed to say that, and to have them, help prepare me for that, in the sense of getting me into a good school that got me my first internship, that got me my first job, and for the younger demographic, if there is a younger demographic watching, I don't know if you get the 18 to 24-year-olds.
Yeah, the kids are all watching this. I mean,
wait,
would you rather watch this or play Xbox? Come on.
Absolutely.
Come on. This wins out.
This gorgeous studio. But what I would say is, I would say take advantage of everything that you can that the town has to offer, but specifically that the schools have to offer too. Because what I found is that the teachers I encountered in my time at the high school and throughout Milton, they really do want to see you succeed. They want to see you come back 5, 10, 15 years later and say, hey, thanks a lot. And if you have a dream, you have an aspiration, they'll help you get there. And I think that's an important lesson for anyone anyone that's watching, but specifically someone that may possibly be in my shoes, or someone like my good buddy Wayne who's off camera and they want to be selling international clothing and setting up big business deals thousands of miles from home. You can do that stuff and get a jumping point right here in Milton.
When you went to BC, what were some of the things that they found attractive from your transcript and everything that you received at Milton High? Anything in particular?
I remember that I think junior year.
Because it's competitive to get into BC. It's not like everyone gets in.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. I think it was my junior year and I don't recall it vividly, but the town started the mandatory community service. Program. Yeah. And I remember that was one thing that stood out. In addition to,
what did you do for your community service?
That's a great question.
You didn't cheat on that, did you? You didn't get someone to sign off on those hours, did you?
I think I did some park department dances. I might have chaperoned or something. It wasn't too much heavy lifting, I remember. But, I think one of the things that
we're clamping down on
that they liked is that, you came from a rigorous academic setting. That was the high school's curriculum, but then you also came from a place where they pushed you to get involved outside of the classroom and outside of your sports team or outside of your after school job and things like that. And the other thing that they liked too was the high school has so many clubs and activities and things like that where you can.
Well, they're being whittled away with expenses.
Times change.
It's all about the money. So, but you remember a lot of those things?
I do remember a lot of those things, and I can remember putting together the arduous process of applying to schools, which I don't envy anyone that has to do it. But being able to take that page in the college application where it says clubs, extracurriculars, and actually having to attach a second page because there were so many that you had the opportunity to involve yourself in at Milton High, and they help make you a more well-rounded student, and I think in some cases help grease the rails to get into school a little bit too.
Sure. Well, Eddie, it was a pleasure having you. Folks, if you just tuned in, you have been listening to Eddie Keohane, gentleman that grew up in Milton. You folks still over on Reservation Road?
Still on Reservation Road. My little sister is moving back in, so the empty nest is now going to be +1. Just finished UMass Amherst, so she's coming home. They got rid of me, and they get her back. So.
And were you on the couch when you come back to visit?
Yeah, pretty much. I was a little late today because I actually had to cut the lawn. So you can't seem to escape the chores of Milton. That's the only tough part.
Eddie's going to be home next weekend. Leave the lawn for him. They want your schedule, eh?
Yeah.
Well, hey, it's a pleasure. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your life story, and I hope that in the future, if there's a need in the town, that maybe you can help them out. You know?
Absolutely.
I think there's some talk about doing something over at the high school. I think the Foundation of Education, and I don't. There's been talk about maybe helping with a studio at the high school. You know, so I mean, television is a major part of people's lives today.
Absolutely.
And it wouldn't hurt for the students to learn a little bit more about it and the impact it has and how to.
Give me a call. I'm only a train ride away.
Hey, well, maybe we can. If we have some students down in New York, get us a tour of the studio.
Come on by.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Eddie, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Great show.
Bye-bye.